Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more home defense testing, and today we've got a very interesting combo to try out with a shell that could potentially surprise us, but I think it might kind of float in that gray area where a lot of people probably just wouldn't use these in the grand scheme of things, at least not for their intended purpose, but they could work well in a few other scenarios, but we're going to see what they can do in the situation they were intended for when it comes to home defense today. But as for the loads we've got today, I brought out some of these. Might be a little tricky to see with the sun glare this morning, but these are some American Tactical 410 buckshot shells. I don't think it specifically says home defense on here necessarily, but that is really what's implied across all the advertising and stuff for these. But what's interesting is these are a 410 2.5-inch shell loaded with 12 pellets of BBB buckshot, so triple B buck. I don't think we've ever tested any pellets in that size across any of our testing, and you really don't see a loading quite like this very often anyway, unless you're a hand loader loading this shot size for a specific purpose. At least not anymore, now that we can't use lead for waterfowl. Apparently, it's 1/3 of an ounce of payload, which isn't all that much. It's only 12 pellets, and they're not very large pellets either. So would these be an ideal choice for a 410 in a home defense scenario? For me, I'm probably still gonna run your standard like 5-pellet triple-aught buck shells over something like this, but it doesn't mean that these couldn't do the job in the right scenario either. I wouldn't want to be hit with one, but I don't think it would be as effective as a standard triple-aught load in a 410 or something would be. So very interesting loading, and I guess we'll see how it does in a home defense scenario. But here's what one of those shells looks like out of the box. You can kind of see those pellets stacked up in there. They don't have a full-length wad, but they do have this big base wad piece just sitting below them. As for the setup we're going to test them in, I don't have a quote-unquote tactical 410 or anything like that, but what I do have is this. It's a Mossberg 500 410. Technically it is the turkey model, but all that means is camouflage, and we've got changeable chokes. It does have a 24-inch barrel. I do have a cylinder bore choke in the gun today, so no constriction whatsoever, and it will at least give us some sort of reference point from a 410 shotgun platform what they're capable of, and I've got a pretty basic just Simmons Pro Target red dot on top. As for today's test, we're going to start by running it the same as we usually do. We're going to shoot 5 shots ranging from 7 to 25 yards, so 7, 10, 15, 20, and 25. Some of those distances may be farther than what you should or shouldn't take a shot just in general in a defensive scenario, and they may be a little bit too far for these shells in a defensive scenario to perform properly, but we need to see what kind of range distance cap that we have, if any, here, and what it would look like if you were ever put in that situation for whatever reason you can think of. And of course, all of those shots will be through the chronograph as well. Boss claim is 1400 for those shells, so we'll see how accurate that is. And then, I don't usually do this, but I've got some water jugs out here today, and I think it would be wise of us to put a round into a couple of those jugs and see what happens and what kind of penetration we get. Might not be an ideal representation, but another data point. So enough rambling, let's get you guys a view of these targets first. There's some pretty rough silhouettes spray painted down there since the spray paint didn't want to work this morning, but we can get the idea on what kind of pattern we're going to get from these. Alright, so for our chronograph numbers, I apologize for the glare. The sun is just really bad this morning, no matter what way we face. The boss claim was 1400. From our 24-inch barrel, we were seeing in the 1500s. So they clearly tested these through a little shorter barrel than what we have from what it looks like. But we had 1521, 1532, 1516, 1520, and 1505 for an average at 1518. So that would be plenty enough velocity to make these shells hurt for sure. And they're pretty consistent with an extreme spread of 27 and a standard deviation of 8. So that is a little bit of a surprise seeing how consistent they are. So looking good for velocity, but let's check out how our intruders actually fared. All right, so here's our targets. Like I said a minute ago, pretty rough spray paint job with it being cold and me not being able to warm the can up today. That's what you get for spray pattern, but it tells us what we need to know. We'll start at 7 and 10 yards. Over here on the right at 7 yards, all 12 pellets hit, although we were a little high. That red dot is not zeroed for shot purposes like this. It's zeroed with slugs. So I had to compensate a little bit going forward, but all 12 pellets are technically right through the neck area there. But we had a 7 and an 1/8 inch spread with the little gas seal base piece hitting right there as well. It's honestly not bad at all. It's a cylinder bore for a choke that we've got in that shotgun, and it's not a terrible spread. It definitely could have been way worse overall. And the same goes for 10 yards over here on the left. We opened it up a little bit more to 9 1/4 inches, but we still kept that nice even spread of pellets. There's no major flyers or anything like that. And it definitely doesn't look like our little base wad is pushing through the pattern and just blowing everything all over the place. So at least inside of your house or down a hallway or across the living room, I'm saying that's gonna be effective enough, especially if you put that shot up a little higher where I don't have anything drawn up there at the top, if you know what I mean. But really not too bad of a start as for our pattern purposes anyway. Now moving over to 15 yards, anywhere from here on out is going to require you to kind of make the choice whether you should or shouldn't take the shot at somebody. But the farthest 2 points across are down there at the bottom from left to right, and that's 20 1/2 inches. And I think it was about 18 inches from the top to the bottom. But still, you've got most of your pattern right through center mass. So if you needed to take that shot, would it be effective at stopping the threat? Maybe, or maybe not. But it would definitely slow them down, I'm thinking, that's for sure. I don't think anybody's going to be too pleased getting hit by that. And now we move to 20 yards. Pretty much the same similar story as we saw at 15. Continued opening it up a little bit to 24 1/4 inches from top to bottom there. But still, majority of your pellets are right through the center mass area. So it's pretty much the same as 15 yards. Maybe, maybe not effective as for actually legitimately ending the threat, but it's going to sting for sure. And finally, at 25 yards, I think here's where we're really starting to just open our spread up. Mathematically, we only went to 26 inches, so not that much bigger of a pattern, but you can see our spread is definitely starting to thin out quite a bit through the center mass area. You would have still got 7 or 8 definite hits on your target, that's for sure. But that is, I would say, the limit for pattern purposes anyway for these shells. Overall, it's really not too bad. Clearly, at up close and personal distances down here in the same room or inside the house, it is gonna be plenty effective, that's for sure. Once you get out a little farther, you open the pattern up, you still hold an even pattern, but I think you're gonna start losing some of your effective range pretty quickly with these shells, at least for the consistent stopping power aspect of it. But it could have been way worse for pattern performance through a cylinder bore for sure. So let's set some jugs up over here and we'll see what kind of penetration capability we have. All right, so water jug penetration time. I've got 5 1-gallon water jugs set up behind me. Is a water jug overly comparable to actual tissue? Not really. Ballistics gel would be better, but we ain't got the budget around here for that stuff because it's getting expensive. But this will give us a pretty consistent medium to run these into anyway. I have it set up where this one oddball jug is in the middle. If we get to that third jug, I will be surprised, but at least we should be able to get into jug number 2 in a home defense scenario. That's how much penetration that I think we would reliably need to have. Anything jug number 3 and beyond is a bonus point. So I'm going to be set up at 10 yards with the chrono as well so we can get our velocity, and we'll be able to calculate energy numbers as well based on that. And I think that's probably about the max average distance that these would be used for in a defensive scenario, is that 10 yard or so range. So that should give us a good idea on what we've got going on. So I'm going to step back here, get you guys to view these jugs, take our shot, and see what we get. All right, so for velocity, we had 1476 out of that particular. That's the lowest of the day actually, but we've got something to calculate some energy off of now. So first off, we'll go based on their 1/3 ounce claim for total until we weigh the pellets later. If we go off of that 1/3 ounce claim, we get a muzzle energy of 706 foot-pounds for this particular shot. As for the jugs, jug number 1 is down here, completely blown off the table, and it is split wide open, that's for sure. If I flip it around here, it looks like we did have a pretty decent centered up shot right through the middle of the jug. Plenty of pellets entered there, and there was nothing in this jug, at least not sitting down here anyway. So that brings us to jug number 2. We still had a bunch of good hits right through pretty much center mass, a few of them low, a few of them right through here, and all the water did drain out of it, but it does sound like there is at least 1 or 2 pellets in there. As far as jug number 3 goes here, we might have had one skim the edge of it here, but as for the face of it, we might have had one enter right down here at the bottom. I'm not seeing anything else. Well, there is one right at the tip of my finger there. I don't think it quite penetrated, but it was very, very close. So we might actually have one pellet down in here into jug number 3, but jug number 4 and 5 back here have absolutely nothing in them, and nothing touched them. So I'm going to dump those 2 jugs out, number 2 and 3, and we'll see what we recovered. All right, so we did recover 2 of those pellets. One was from jug number 2 and one was from jug number 3. You can see there is a little bit of deformation on them, but nothing overly flattening, I guess you would say. But to have one of these pellets for sure get into jug number 3, then we know it's decent enough penetration. I guess the rest of them that hit and entered jug number 2 probably just kind of sprayed out of the back of it. As you saw, we did have a couple that skimmed jug number 3 on the sides, so that's probably what happened there. But it seems like 2.5, I guess you would call it, jugs on average at 10 yards for a home defense scenario is going to be good enough anyway. I mean, 2.5 jugs is easily 12 inches worth of water, so for penetration it could have been way worse, that's for sure. It's really not too bad overall. So here we are inside, and you can see a good close-up here of a couple of the pellets that we recovered. One of them is definitely a little more smashed than the other, that's for sure. But if we put them both on our little scale here, we get about 19 grains. And if we split them here, the more smashed one is 9.2, and the better condition one is 9.4-ish. So right about the same, just over 9 grains apiece. And now if we go back to our original velocity for this shell, if I average the weight of these pellets out at about 9.3 grains apiece, which is splitting the difference, mathematically multiply that by 12 and we get 111.6-ish grains for total weight for all of the pellets, which is a little bit over 1/4 ounce. So it's actually a little bit under their 1/3 ounce claim, which would be 146 grains or right about there. And after continuing to do the math, after calculating all of the per pellet energy based on the weights we actually got from these pellets, we're actually getting about 542 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. So quite a bit less than the 706 we had earlier. And if we measure the best we can on the roundest sides that we can, we get 0.197. I believe triple B shot is supposed to be 19 caliber, so they're pretty close. At least they're not undersized, that's for sure. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about those results right there? I don't know that I've seen very many, if any, other 410 shells that are loaded like that. I'm honestly not too disappointed in them. We saw good, consistent, even patterns, at least out to 15 or 20 yards if you needed that shot distance for whatever reason in a defensive scenario. And we saw at least 2 with a little bit into jug number 3 as far as penetration goes. So really, not that bad. Now, I still think they kind of float that gray area where they might answer a question that nobody really had in the first place. If I'm running a 410 for home defense, it's probably going to be triple-aught buck. That's not to say these wouldn't be effective in the right scenarios, but how consistently and reliably effective, especially when it comes to intruders that may have a little bit of something in their system or have 6 different shirts on for whatever reason, because they tend to do that sometimes as well. But if you're in that situation, I just don't know how reliably consistent they would be. They would still hurt for sure, but as far as penetration to immediately stop the threat, I don't think I would trust these as much as a buckshot or a slug load in a 410. Now for a property gun, that would be an excellent load. You could easily get rid of groundhogs, possums, raccoons. If you needed to shoot a fox that was trying to get into the chicken coop 20 yards out into the backyard, it would be plenty effective for that purpose. And that might be what we test next with these shells. Putting them through a little tighter choke, seeing what kind of pattern we can get and how far out we can hold it, because they might do very nicely for that specific situation. So I think these deserve a little more testing. But leave all your thoughts thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you ever tested any of these American Tactical Triple B 410 shells? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is this a load that you would ever use in a home defense scenario or a property gun type of scenario like I just said as well? Or is it just kind of a shell that might be fun to mess around with on the range and it just really wouldn't serve any practical use for you? Or is this kind of exactly what you're looking for or what you would prefer if you're guarding your house with a 410? And maybe what other testing do you want to see me do with these shells through different chokes at different distances and so on? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.